Right.
I think it's possible to, in a way, generate an experience which is so uniquely customized for this person. Now, which even 1 or 2 years back, it was impossible to do that. Yeah. So I think that's the way I see technology sort of going, where we look at it as more a generative source of intelligence, where the intelligence is coming in across in terms of several other sources of information which are available, and then it packages it and gives it to us in simple sachets of easily consumable manner.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Observability Talk. Through this podcast, we often aim to look at observability from different perspective of SRE, development architecture, product owner, or a business leader. Check out our earlier episodes in the podcast platform of your choice. Today, we are glad to introduce you to Krishnakumar Natarajan, usually referred to as NKK or KK, depending upon which timeline you have worked with him. KK is a co-founder and managing partner at Mela Ventures. Mela Ventures is a B2B technology-focused fund predominantly investing in technology-based early-stage startups. He is a leading authority in the global IT sector. He co-founded Mindtree in 1999 and has played key roles in building the company's innovative approaches to delivering IT services and solutions to global 2,000 enterprises. Apart from building the startup ecosystems, he has been an active angel investor and has made more than 30 investments in a wide range of technology-driven companies across consumer, products, healthcare, logistics, and financial services. He also mentors high-growth startup CEOs, helping them with approaches to the market, making the right technology choices, organizations, people, and fundraising. Mela Venture has invested in ViewNet as part of our first institutional round, and KK has been a source of constant guidance and support for us. Good morning, KK. A warm welcome to Observability Talk.
Thank you so much, Bharat. It's a pleasure for me to share some of my thoughts on the whole space of observability, which is becoming so critical for customers.
Sure. KK, you have been deeply involved in driving digital transformation across several organizations, particularly at Mindtree. Many enterprises struggle with large-scale digital transformation. In your experience, whatever work you have done, what are some of the key leadership strategies that you have seen make the difference between a success and a failure?
That's a very interesting question, Bharat. In fact, beyond Mindtree, I've had the, I would say, absolute pleasure and privilege of engaging with large organizations which have been going through this whole digital transformation and how do they really make it work for them. My understanding is that I think there is a set of organizations which I would think are more reactive. What I mean by that is they see competition doing something and then they quickly want to, in a way, replicate some of that or provide something which is similar to that, which means there's really a more short-term thinking of saying, hey, what can we do in the next 45, 90 days? While it might give some initial sort of success, those don't tend to stay because ultimately I think leadership needs to clearly have a view on their digital strategy and have a framework for prioritization. So the first key factor which I think makes digital transformation successful is really it is from the top and they have a very clear thinking and a strategy for how they'll do it and how they really execute on that. I think that's very, very key. Yeah. Having said that, the second key thing, even between organizations which have a digital strategy, and at the same time, there are others who even have a similar strategy but do better. What is it that's different between these two companies? The one which I see work very well is where organizations ultimately want to leverage digital transformation want to grow much faster.
Right.
And the second thing is to enhance their customer experience.
Very true.
I've seen companies which really engage the customer early on in the process of even transforming some of the underlying process to a more digital first approach.
Right.
And here in Mindtree, I think we had a very interesting, what I would call intervention, which we thought worked very well. In fact, in our key markets, we built infrastructure, what we used to call the digital pumpkin, which has a whole set of both hardware and software infrastructure. But the idea was that when you're embarking upon a digital transformation, say, I want to enhance my customer experience,
Right.
get in all the relevant stakeholders, get in the customers, get in the product team, get in the manufacturing team, get in the finance team. Let all the stakeholders who contribute to that end moment of truth for the customer, which is better customer experience, they spend 4-5 days thinking through all aspects of it. What is the process change which are required? How will they go about implementing it? They actually build a small prototype saying, hey, this is how I want to look. So that there's a lot of alignment from all the stakeholders.
Right.
Then they do the work of taking it to the business to get a budget sanctions and so on. Now, so the need to really get in diverse stakeholders aligned to what you're trying to do through digital transformation, I think is the second key aspect which makes a big impact in terms of success. The third is really the execution part. To me, many organizations think of digital transformation as the work of the CIO. So as long as I've given my requirements, this needs to, it never happens that way. It is not an IT infrastructure issue. It is a business problem which is being solved. And to that extent, trying to get multifunctional teams as a part of the execution strategy is again another distinction which I think has worked very well for many customers.
Thank you, KK. This is pretty interesting, right? Like, say, 3-step approach to digital transformation. But I would just insist a bit more on the failure part. One thing what I have realized is people generally understand the success part very well, but I would like you to identify at least one pitfall people generally get into when they are doing some of these digital transformation strategies for their enterprises. What they should definitely avoid, or what they generally get into but should definitely avoid. Yeah.
No, that's a great question. Because what happens is, since technology is changing so fast, I think top management really has, I would say, almost a sense of awe or a fear for technology. So when one of their competitors does something and clients even sort of start demonstrating their comfort with that, there are companies which get really driven by that. So they want to deliver some quick results. So either they just want to deliver a copycat of that.
Right.
But what they don't realize is, I think a solution is in the context of their company, their sort of infrastructure and data which they have, and their customer needs may also be a little different. So rather than just following a copycat approach, how do you take that as an idea and necessarily make it relevant for your target segment of customers and for your internal organization? That I think is a key thing. So one point of failure which I really think is just trying to rush into it without thinking through how it will really be successful in your context. The second key thing is, I think distinctly all this involved resources. So you can't expect something to come out of it. So saying that, oh, we have invested last year 10 crores on SAP implementation, we have put in enough money in technology, has no bearing in terms of another digital transformation initiative.
Right.
So many times top management needs to realize that, yes, there is an investment, it's a step investment, and you will get very good return on investment if you're willing to wait for some time. I think that's very, very key.
Very nice. See, just extending this same question to another part, people generally talk about that success of any project depends upon the preparation people do.
Correct.
Like what you talked about, the thinking through of everyone going into what exactly needs to be done. How would you recommend people prepare for digital transformation initiatives? Is there any specific things they should worry about when they are really looking at, like you said, right? Everybody has to thinking through part.
Yeah.
So, what would you recommend there?
See, I think the biggest danger is what I call a tool first approach. Because again, if you go back to the area of saying I want to enhance customer experience, and if at the top management level they know a few people in Adobe who come and sold Adobe as customer experience manager, then invariably the director is saying, hey, I think it looks good, so let us use it, which is what I call a tool forward approach, which I think is almost a detriment to success. Because for all you know, I think you need to configure something it's appropriate for your organization, your customers, not necessarily get fixated on a tool, but really do what is relevant. See, at the end of the day, when together you build a stakeholder alignment on what you're trying to achieve, and if that tool becomes the best way to implement it, then it's fine because you at least have a sense of aligned purpose of people and they'll work to make it happen. But the moment you just start with the tool, then even from a planning perspective, you start thinking about the constraints of the tool, not necessarily a customer backwards approach, but you're really taking a constraint forward approach, which again will make your initiative far less productive and impactful more than anything else.
Right.
So I think this whole reason for avoiding a tool first approach is very critical. The ability and the need to invest in, I would say, multi stakeholder engagement to really come to an aligned view in terms of what you're trying to do. I think that's critical. And of course, the right type of execution resources to make it happen. Of course, there'll be some level of governance also which needed to be done. Now, unlike maybe your traditional things where maybe you might review the IT function once in 2 years or once twice in a year or something. Here, I think these are things which require constant review by top management. So probably in a governance structure where you say every 4 weeks we'll review this, see what are the constraints, how do I demonstrate top management support for the initiative by clearing some of the bottlenecks. Those become very critical for execution success.
Thank you, KK. See, this overall digital transformation, most of these enterprises are doing either for getting more customers onboarded or improving their customer experience, right? What we have been talking to our customers, most of these digital first businesses, the businesses who is focusing more on the digital channels, right? We believe that observability has becoming a critical component while designing some of these digital transformation initiative for these enterprises.
Yes.
To hear your thoughts on this, as well as in your most recent reviews, because you have been talking to a lot of enterprises, did you find observability as one of the critical components for these digital transformation initiatives?
I think that's an important question. Again, here, if we trace the whole, I would say, manner in which digital transformation initiatives also happen, I think it started with the broad objective of enhancing customer experience. But then that was just limited to one area. When I say that one area, if you look at saying one of our earliest engagements was with rent a car. So it is only with respect to the reservation system of Avis. The customer came, he looked for, because it was only talking to that one reservation system,
Right.
and he booked a car. But from there, I think it's also expanded. Today, when a customer comes into your site, he not only wants to sort of book a car, he also wants to make payment, which means that reservation system needs to talk to a card acquiring system and potentially maybe a bank. So the digital system itself is becoming multi sort of functional. So multitude of things need to talk to enable the end customer experience. What I think people haven't adequately realized is that how important it is to give a seamless, pleasant experience to the customer. Because at the back, you have many systems talking to each other, and a
Right.
point of failure can be any one of them. To that extent, I don't think people are adequately aware or getting ready. I think there needs to be an education in terms of saying, hey, you're not dealing only with a closed loop, your enterprise system. You're today talking to multitude of systems. Some of them will be external, and consequently, you need to trace that customer transaction real time all through the time the transaction happens,
Right.
which is where observability becomes very critical. I think the awareness levels with more nuanced users is getting better. But if you ask me, if an average enterprise who's sort of thinking in terms of enhancing consumer experience, do they think through that whether they need an observability tool? I don't think they even understand that. So there is a lot of education which needs to also happen.
Right. And I completely agree on that point. That was one of the reason why we started this podcast, to make people aware that why observability is very critical. And this should be their thought process from day zero rather than
Okay.
doing sort of an afterthought once the application is up and running. And then they realize, oh, we do not have visibility into how my application is performing. Right. Now, the same observability tools are also being used for various other purposes, right? Like uh, real-time visibility, like you talked about, for customer experience understanding, compliances and regulatory requirements, and so on, right? Have you seen enterprises using these tools for compliance and regulatory requirements? Do you have a use case where these observability tools are helping enterprises on compliance?
See, again, here I think it is being used, but I think it's a very small segment of the people who I would think are the early adopters and the more nuanced users. Because I think the ability, once you're getting the real time visibility on how do you build a layer of compliance around it, is a very powerful use case. For that matter, if there is a real time visibility in terms of what trading transactions an employee is doing, and the compliance need is that, hey, there is a trading window closure, or there is a UPSI information available, so you can't trade now. So it can even stop at that level. And what I see now is, even if you look at large systems, uh, today depositories give the flexibility that if you're associated with some company and you're one of the KMPs and you can't trade, they block it at the demat level, which is because they have the data that you own shares, and they combine it with the data saying, hey, this company has declared no trading for KMPs over this period. So even if you go to your securities, give a sell thing, it won't happen. It'll throw you out. So in that way, I think clearly these tools will extend to provide very key compliance and regulatory environment support. But I don't think it is still mainstream. I think the more advanced users are starting to use this, it is not mainstream as yet.
Right, right. In some of our conversation now, we are seeing RBI has brought in this Seva portal, for example, right, where they are asking banks to basically provide information in terms of how their critical applications are performing. Right. Similarly, you talked about securities. There also, SEBI has started asking for something called a Llama integration, which basically again is similar to how your trading applications are performing, right?
Perform.
So we are seeing some of these sort of compliances coming up, and observability platform like ours are actually being used by our customers now to interface with these APIs which are sending data to RBI and SEBI, sort of thing.
Got it. Got it.
right?
Right.
As a board member, see, you have been in the industry for so long. You have been in the board of multiple enterprises like fintech, consumer care, retail, and so on, right? And you have a very unique view into digital transformation, how it impacts customer experience across industries, right? Uh, what do you think are the key element for companies to get right in order to provide this evolving customer demands across industries?
Correct. No, to be honest, I'll tell you, some of this have taken boards by surprise. The rapidity with which even the digital transformation impact started happening to AI, to Gen AI, I think there's been a very rapid impact of these on organizations. So, to be honest, at the board level, people understand that they need to have uh, a proper plan and a strategy for this, but they really lack the resources to really execute on that. So, many times it really becomes that the board doesn't have a view of what is it that they'll question management about because of their own lack of knowledge and ability to do it.
Right.
And again, when I think back, is that critical need, or is it easy to educate boards on what are the type of questions they should be asking management? It's not an easy thing. Yeah. So, to my mind, I think managements have to take that role of educating the boards. These are the pluses and minuses. In fact, in some boards which I'm in, I've couple of times done external people coming and giving a view in terms of what should be the board's role in driving digital transformation itself. So I think a number of these activities have to be done and done consistently before I think you'll start seeing impact. Right now, to be honest, boards really function almost on a interrupt basis. There is some major chaos which has happened, a cybersecurity threat or something. They really react to those. But is there a planned effort in terms of saying how will they add value to the company in this space? Is
Right.
still, I think, a few years away.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting to know. So, KK, I'll just try my luck. Just wanted to know from you because you have been part of so many boards. Uh, have you ever heard any board member talking about observability or using observability to enhance customer experience or digital transformation initiatives?
Uh, See, to be honest, I don't think this conversation happens in the board now. Only now, little more higher level conversation of saying, hey, what is our digital transformation story? What are we doing? And that is also with a lot of what I call reluctance, because many times I find board members little uh, not aware of technology. They feel almost distant from technology because they don't understand it in depth.
Okay.
So their whole engagement is really even at an initial level, and whatever the management indicates, I think they tend to go with that. Yeah. So nuanced ideas like saying, hey, you can significantly enhance your customer experience by having an observability layer, and that will lead to better growth, better customer satisfaction, and so on. That is never a board conversation at all because they themselves aren't even aware of the lower levels of technology and have a point of view on that.
Okay. Okay. In some of our conversations with the CIOs and the IT heads and app heads, right? They generally talk about that they have started sort of providing this transaction level information and how many transactions are failing with technical declines or business declines, and what sort of are they figuring where they figure in, let's say, if it's a UPI sort of application, where they figure in that NPCI UPI decline list. Are they at the bottom of the list that, okay, no, there are not much declines, or are they on the top of the list, right? So some of these things people have been telling us. So that is why was interested to know if people started talking about how do we solve these problems, and is the observability one of the point of discussions there? Yeah. But
Unfortunately, at this time, I don't think that's a point of discussion.
Okay. Then my next question is something very related to observability, but this is something again has become much more important and critical. Do you see people started discussing about more automation in IT operations or bringing in AI, automation, auto remediation, self healing sort of thing?
See, the general awareness in terms of AI and automation again is not a new story. It has been there.
Right.
That clearly is a point of conversation because people do hear about it, though they don't know the nuances, but they believe productivity can be improved. So clearly, there's conversations around that saying, hey, how do we make our process more efficient? How do we make them fail less? And people, by nature, because of so much of talk about AI, would like to see what is it that the company is doing on building in AI. So that's also certainly a point of conversation. And particularly when they get into the annual operating plan and they discuss what is it that they're going to do, these become key questions to some of the functional areas. What I think still boards don't realize is in some boards I've seen it really becomes a CIO issue. While the CIO is to produce an infrastructure to support that.
Right.
A lot of the real heavy lifting has to be done by either the chief digital officer or the chief marketing officer. That element in terms of trying to see for each use case who's going to be the key anchor and the influencer and how do we ensure that they deliver on that. That
Right.
level of what I would call review by the board is still not there.
Not there. Okay. Okay. Uh, just extending this whole conversation because we are talking about automation and AI.
Yeah.
What are your views of the future of IT operations with AI, ML, and Gen AI? And see, one of the term which I heard from somebody called no ops. See, there is an IT ops, and then people are saying that there are a lot of people who do sort of I mean sort of put a TV and then do a eyeball monitoring sort of thing. And whenever something goes wrong, and then they raise a buzzer or raise call people and so on. And then it's a completely opposite side of no ops where nobody gets involved. As in when observability platform raise an alert, it basically has something which is sort of a self-healing capability or auto remediation.
The agent which really sort of
So agentic sort of AI coming in, right? What are your views on this future of IT operations with this?
see, I think IT operations are getting more and more complex. And because of the complexity and the integrated nature of the IT infrastructure, to expect humans to solve it in real time, I think is almost not possible. Which is why I do believe tools for observability, agentic framework sitting on top of it is going to be a necessity in the context of the time required to solve the problem.
Right.
But at the same time, while 99% will get solved through with an observability tool and an agentic framework sitting on top of it, there needs to be some human interventions on some complex cases which you have not envisaged or it's not trained to do that. So to me, I think there's going to be a good coexistence between digital tools and humans. The type of humans need to be people who are learning from every one of those. They can't remain static. It's not the same problem. They're not going to be put in roles where it's almost a routine that they do. Each problem which they need to intervene is a very unique problem. It's why the learnability of the person, his ability to sort of put pieces together and connect the dots become very important.
Right.
So I envisage a hybrid environment with digital tools and people, but people with different skill sets also. People who are curious, people who are able to sort of look at things differently. So the nature of those people will also be very different.
Very true. Very true. And if I may ask you, what is your wish list that you believe is now possible with AI, Gen AI, with respect to this digital transformation initiative? So something which was not possible, let's say 10, 15 years back, But that was a wish list that if this would have been there, maybe things would have been much easier, right? But now some of those things are possible with AI Gen AI. What would those things would be?
No, I think today, I think we're in a very unique position where if you start from the internet itself, which was more an information storage
Right.
and helped us retrieve information. Now, I think as you're moving to the Gen AI stage, it's becoming more generated, which means the ambition in terms of creating a very unique customer experience is absolutely critical. Now, so what does that mean? Which means that in simple English, a consumer could state what his desire and needs is. Okay, I'm wanting to go on a 7-day holiday to Thailand. But me and my wife want to do more adventure, whereas my children want to do stuff which is maybe very different. And then I have my mother-in-law who has some physical sort of thing. So you need to find some activities where physically not active people can also sort of participate.
Right.
And I think in the context of the environment and the ease with which systems are able to talk to each other today,
Right.
I think it's possible to, in a way, generate an experience which is so uniquely customized for this person. Now,
Right.
which even 1 or 2 years back, it was impossible to do that. So I think that's the way I see technology sort of going, where we look at it as more a generative source of intelligence, where the intelligence is coming in across in terms of several other sources of information which are available. And then it packages it and gives it to us in simple sachets of easily consumable manner. I think that's where it is clearly good.
So that's a very interesting space to be in also. Like everybody is trying to do this, gather this intelligence and try to give you much more personalized experience. I think that's a very interesting space to be in.
Yeah.
Two questions more. One is about, I'm sure you are very bullish about Unit's future. Are the top 3 points that makes you so confident about Unit?
See, my sense is that the way both consumers and enterprises move to digital is an irreversible sort of move. But compared to the earlier model where there was 1 or 2 winners in the system of records, which is also a transition from probably the early days of mainframe and so on, we moved to these being a thing. Whereas in the new world, I think there are going to be multitude of players who need to collaborate to deliver a very unique customer experience.
Very true.
Today's technologies allow very seamless interfacing, exchanging of data. You pass from one to the other. So if that is going to be the environment where multiple complex digital systems are going to collaborate seamlessly to deliver a consumer experience or an enterprise outcome, there is a need for a tool to monitor this real time.
Right.
There is a need to apply AI on top of those transactions to understand what of it is the directional thing. Yeah.
Right.
And that in turn gives a lot of insight to say, how do I continuously keep improving my systems? So
Right.
the customer need to implement such tools and the urgency to do that, I clearly see it being there. Which is why I think it's important for Munit to maintain that continuous focus on how we're not only just going to be a real-time monitoring of how the customer observability is, but how are we going to get more sense out of the data which you're seeing so that you can do those new inputs and continue to sort of move the needle on this.
Right. No, thank you so much for that insight. Finally, this is some question which we have been asking almost every guest. We would like you to talk about 1 or 2 of your favorite books that have really transformed and inspired you, and you always recommend or gift them to people.
See, what I do feel is, I think there are some which are basic, but it's more critical to, at various stages, look at what is most relevant.
Right.
Like I would think if you were to look at 15, 20 years back, execution by Jack Welch was a great sort of thing. But again, if you look at today in terms of startups which are starting to build stuff, I think Bob Horowitz's Hard Things About Hard Things is a very fantastic book in terms of giving people the right thing. And many times I feel I gain a lot by going back and reading that, because there's some aspect which you may not have seen.
Right.
I think that's very, very critical. Having been in the investing space and you go through normal sort of things like saying, hey, this is Warren Buffett's theory, this is somebody else's theory and so on, which you tend to try and see how it can be applicable to your thing. The one book which I read recently is a book by this guy called Pulak Prasad, who incidentally used to be an investor in Mindtree, called Nalanda Capital. His whole book is what I learned about investing from Darwin. Because he just sees that there is a lot of similarity between live species, how do they evolve, what are the sort of checks and balances they put in. These very relevant in the context of investing. Yeah. So which means what was very mathematical, which is number driven, you're bringing in a conceptual framework of how human evolution is and try and apply those principles onto this, which I thought was very interesting. And it's again a very interesting read to give a very different perspective in terms of investing also.
That's an interesting book. I'll definitely look it up and try finding time to read through it. Thank you so much for your time and insights, KK. It has always been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bharat. I enjoyed the whole conversation, and all the very best on this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with your colleagues who have similar interests. It helps us spread the word. For more information about ViewNet Systems, please visit us at www.viewnetsystems.com.